Today's notes we're going to be taking on notebook paper, and I suggest you keep them somewhere safe. Don't just write them down and throw them away. If you have a folder or a binder, that would be a good place to keep those notes if you're writing them on loose notebook paper. If you have an empty spiral or journal, that would be a good place to write your notes. Now, please don't write them in a reading journal or, a journal for another class. But if you have a spare spiral, then that would be a good idea to keep your notes in. Okay. Independent and dependent quantities is an idea that we actually introduced yesterday, but we're going to spend some more time practicing that. This is a very important skill that we need to develop. We have to learn to recognize and identify which quantities are independent and which ones are dependent, and we're going to be using these ideas to fill in tables, to fill in graphs, also to write equations. So it's really important that we practice this. Okay, so many outcomes in life depend on something. For example, the amount of money you make can depend on the number of hours you work. If you get an hourly wage, you yourself can't decide, oh, you know what? Hey, this week I'm going to make $12 per hour. I know last week I only made 8, but this week I'm going to make. You can't decide that. But you can often ask for extra hours or choose to work extra hours if they allow for that. So that's something that can be changed. So when one thing depends on the other, we say these two things have a relationship or form a relation. So if you're ill and you can't go into work, that's going to decrease your paycheck because you will have worked less hours. So the money depends on the number of hours. Okay? In a relation, one outcome is dependent on another. That dependent outcome is called the dependent variable. In the example we just gave, the dependent variable is the money that you make. That depends on the independent variable. The controlling variable is the item we can choose to change, and that's known as the independent variable. We choose to call in sick if we're ill, but we know that that's going to change the amount of money that we're going to make that week. Okay, so here's our first example we're going to practice. And independent is going to be represented by the variable x. Dependent is represented by the variable y. So in this statement, my heart rate at the end of 1 minute of doing jumping jacks depends on the number of jumping jacks I did in that minute. So my question is, which is the dependent quantity? Heart rate or the number of jumping jacks? So which one of those depends on the other? Go ahead and answer that question for me, please. In this situation, the dependent variable is the heart rate. Um, the independent variable is going to be the number of jumping jacks. So the heart rate is dependent, the jumping jacks are independent. The heart rate changes or increases because you did more jumping jacks per minute. So if somebody does 200 jumping jacks in a minute, their heart rate's going to be going a lot faster than someone who did 2 jumping jacks in that same 1 minute. So the heart rate will change based on how many jumping jacks that you choose to do. Jumping jacks are completely independent. That's what the person decides to do. Okay, in this next situation, the sentence is, the distance I can walk in 5 minutes depends on the speed or walking rate. So which is the dependent quantity? Is the distance dependent or is the speed or walking rate dependent? Go ahead and answer that for me, please. Okay, so if you just have 5 minutes and you're walking, if you choose to walk slowly, you will not get very far. If you choose to walk really fast, you're going to get a lot farther. So that means that the distance is the dependent quantity. Distance depends on the choice that you make. The independent quantity is going to be the speed that you choose to walk. So distance changes if you increase or decrease your speed. Okay, so in the next scenario, it's the time I spend Watching TV depends on the amount of time it takes me to do my homework. Okay, so which is the dependent quantity? The TV time or the homework time? Go ahead and answer that for me, please. Okay, so in an ideal world, of course, you would make a priority of doing your homework. So uh, the time you spend watching TV should depend on the homework time that you need. So the time watching TV is dependent, the dependent quantity. The time needed for homework is the independent quantity. So if you do your homework first, you'll have more TV time if there is little homework. So you get your homework done really fast. You have a lot of time to watch TV. You'll have less TV time if there's a lot of homework to do. So the dependent quantity will be the TV time. And hopefully you're doing your homework first. Okay, in this last scenario, it says my test grade is a result of the amount of time, study time I spend. So which is the dependent quantity? Is it the test grade or is it the study time? Go ahead and answer that for me, please. Okay, in this situation, the test grade is actually the dependent quantity. So the amount of time you spend studying is the independent quantity. You can choose to spend a very small amount of time studying, or you can choose to spend a great deal of time studying, but the more study time will increase your test score. So that will be the independent quantity. Okay. Now, hopefully you've taken notes, and again, I'm asking you to keep that somewhere safe, like in a folder or in a binder, or if you have a notebook. When we usually take our notes in our textbook, but not always. So please make sure you have a safe place for that. And on Monday, we are going to be doing a quiz to practice to see if we are able to pick out dependent and independent quantities um, well. All right. Thank you for participating. But before we go, I'm going to ask you that question. What do you think the most important thing is about the lesson today? And think about it carefully. Don't say, I don't know. Think about what we've done. Go back over your notes. Go ahead and answer that for me. What is the most important thing to remember about today's lesson? Thank you for having a thoughtful response. I will see you again on Monday. Come to the Math Live sessions. We'll practice this some more.